for exactly 2 seconds. Pam Bondi couldn't answer the one question that mattered, and in that silence, the entire hearing shifted, because this wasn't hesitation, this was exposure. No one had ever walked in with what Roy was holding. Why is she still free? The hearing room felt different that morning. Roy entered carrying a thin folder, and those who knew him understood that thin folders from Roy were the most dangerous kind. Bondi took her seat with the practiced composure of someone who had weathered harder rooms. She adjusted her microphone, folded her hands, smiled once at the cameras. She had been briefed, talking points memorized, statistics ready. Her team had prepared her for aggressive questioners. What nobody had prepared her for was a congressman who had spent 3 weeks reading nothing but 3 million DOJ documents, and who had found, buried inside them, a name that changed everything. She thought this would be manageable. She was catastrophically wrong. Roy didn't open with context. He opened with a name. Attorney General, he began, voice low and deliberate. I want to talk about a woman named Karyna Shuliak. The room shifted instantly. Reporters' fingers froze over keyboards. She was Jeffrey Epstein's girlfriend, Roy continued. She received the last phone call he ever made from that prison cell. And according to his will, signed 2 days before his death, she was set to inherit $100 million. He paused. My question is very simple. Where is she right now? Bondi opened her mouth. Roy didn't wait. Because I've been reading the DOJ files, he said, cutting through her words like a blade. 3 million documents, and her name, Karyna Shuliak, appears over 40,000 times. He held up the folder, turned it toward the cameras deliberately. 40,000 times, Attorney General, emails, wire transfers, travel logs, property records, encrypted communications. This woman was not a background figure. She was threaded through every layer of this operation. He set the folder down. So I'll ask again, has she ever been formally questioned? Silence, not a pause. Silence. Full, unbroken silence in a room full of 200 people. Bondi's jaw moved. I cannot speak to the specifics of Roy leaned forward. His voice didn't rise. It dropped. Lower, slower. Attorney General, that is a yes or no question. Bondi's hands pressed flat against the table. The knuckles whitened slightly. The Department of Justice takes all relevant advice. Roy cut her off clean. So that's a no. After 40,000 mentions, the Department of Justice never asked her a single direct question. 3 camera operators zoomed in simultaneously. A Democratic staffer in the back row put down her pen and just stared at the witness table, because Chip Roy hadn't asked a trap question. He had asked the most elementary, unavoidable question any American would ask. Has she been questioned? And the Attorney General of the United States could not say yes. Here is what the DOJ documents reveal, and why that silence is so devastating. Shuliak arrived in the United States in 2009. She was 20 years old, a dental student from Minsk, Belarus. Epstein was 56. He introduced himself using a false name, Vasily, hiding his identity as a man with a documented criminal history. He paid for her flights. He arranged her visa. He built around her a financial dependency so complete that leaving would have been nearly impossible, and then he built her a career. When Shuliak applied to Columbia University's dental school and was rejected, Epstein made a call, then a donation of $100,000 to the dean's personal research fund. Study guides appeared. A transfer exception was granted. She was admitted. He paid every dollar of her tuition, but the documents reveal something far more disturbing than a manipulated admissions process. Deep inside Epstein's private island, Little St. James, investigators documented a fully equipped dental examination room. Not a medicine cabinet, not a first aid kit. A room, dental chair, clinical lighting, equipment. On an island with no hospital, no clinic, no public medical facility of any kind. And the only person in his inner circle trained to use that room was Karyna Shuliak. Roy looked up from his folder. Attorney General, he said. Who was that room built for? Bondi's jaw tightened. I'm not in a position to— Who used it? Roy pressed. I cannot— Was she ever in it? The question hit the room like a door slamming. Bondi did not answer. She could not answer. And the not answering was itself the most devastating answer she could have given. Roy let the silence run for 5 full seconds. Then he moved on, slowly, deliberately, like a man who had already won. Roy reached back into that thin folder and produced a single printed page. He held it up. This, he said slowly, is a summary of search results from the DOJ document database. The search term was her name, Karyna Shuliak. He paused, reading the number at the top of the page, then reading it again. 40,144 hits in 3 million documents. He turned the page toward the cameras, so everyone watching at home could see the number for themselves, visible to the cameras. Attorney General, Ghislaine Maxwell's name appears less frequently in these files than this woman's name does. Maxwell was prosecuted. Maxwell is in federal prison right now. He looked directly at Bondi. So explain to me, using whatever legal rationale you choose, how the person whose name dominates these files more than the convicted co-conspirator has never once sat across from a federal prosecutor. Bondi reached for her water glass. Her hand was not entirely steady. She did not drink. She set it back down and said nothing for 4 full seconds. Let's talk about the money trail, Roy said, sliding another page forward, because it didn't stop with Shuliak herself. The files showed Epstein wiring $15,000 to her mother in January 2013, then $25,000 to her father in 2014. Shuliak herself transferred another $25,000 to her parents in 2016, informing Epstein by email and attaching the wire confirmation. Belarusian property records suggest the funds were used to purchase an apartment in Drazdy, an exclusive Minsk suburb known for government officials and celebrities. He wasn't just controlling her, Roy said. He was buying her entire family's silence. Bondi's composure held, but it required visible effort now, the kind of effort you can see. And then there's the visa situation. Roy's voice carried the flat cadence of a man reading a criminal indictment. By 2013, her student visa had expired. Epstein's response was not to find a conventional solution, it was to arrange a marriage, a sham marriage, to a woman named Jennifer, who had been in a relationship with Kimball Musk, Elon Musk's brother. Epstein had connected them. The marriage took place in October 2013. A green card followed. Then, in 2018, full United States citizenship. Then divorce. Epstein's attorney celebrated with a message. Now that she's an American, you should throw her a big old party. Roy read that line aloud into the congressional record. The room didn't react. That was worse. Roy closed the folder. This was the moment he had been building toward. Attorney General, he said, his voice dropping to something quieter and more dangerous than anything that had come before. On August 10th, 2019, the morning Jeffrey Epstein died in that federal prison cell, Bureau of Prisons records confirm one outgoing call was made, one to the outside world. He let the silence stretch. That call went to Karyna Shuliak. Nobody moved because everyone understood what that meant. She was the last human voice he heard, the last person he chose to speak to on the morning he died. Roy's jaw tightened. And I want to know, I want it on the record, what was said in that call, whether it was recorded, whether anyone in the Department of Justice has ever listened to it, and whether Karyna Shuliak has ever been asked, under oath, what he told her. Bondi's face had gone very still, the kind of stillness that isn't calm, the kind that is controlled collapse. I will need to look into that, she said. Her voice was barely above a murmur. Roy nodded once, slowly. 30 days, he said, in writing. Everyone around Jeffrey Epstein eventually ran, Roy said finally. His associates, his employees, his enablers, one by one, they distanced themselves, denied everything, disappeared. She did not. He looked at Bondi one last time. She stayed. She was named the primary heir. She received his last call. Her name is in 40,000 documents, and she is, right now, today, living her life somewhere in this country, having never answered a single question under oath. Not once. Not before the investigation, not during it, and not after. The hearing room was absolutely silent. Who made that decision? And who does it protect? Bondi said she would look into it, but she never answered the question. The cameras kept rolling, and somewhere out there, in a dental office in New York or Florida, or somewhere far beyond the reach of these questions, Karyna Shuliak said nothing, as she always has, as, so far, she has been permitted to. Here is what we know for certain. She was 20 years old when a man using a false name flew her to New York and installed her in his household. He paid for everything, her education, her visa, her career, her family's apartment in Minsk. He arranged a sham marriage so she could stay in the country. He signed a trust giving her $100 million 2 days before he died. He made her the last call of his life. And her name appears 40,000 times in the documents that are now public record. Those are facts from federal files, verified. What is not a fact, what has never been established, tested, or even formally pursued is what she knew, what she saw, what she was asked to do, and what she refused, and what she did not. Because nobody with subpoena power has ever sat across from Karyna Shuliak and asked her those questions under oath. Not once. That is the scandal Chip Roy put on the record, not what she did, what was never asked. Was she just a girlfriend? A victim of the same control system that ensnared so many others, financially dependent, geographically isolated, trapped inside a life she did not fully choose? Or was she something the official record has been very carefully constructed to never examine directly? The DOJ files do not answer that, and neither, as of today, has Pam Bondi. Here's the final image Roy left the room with. Not a document, not a statistic, a fact. In 2025, Karyna Shuliak stood in a Columbia University graduation ceremony. She smiled. She laughed on camera. The video is still online. 3,000 people watched it. And not one of them, not one, was a federal prosecutor asking her to raise her right hand and tell the truth. That is not justice. That is not an oversight. That is a decision. Someone decided this woman would never be formally questioned. Someone decided that 40,000 document mentions, $100 million, and the last phone call of a dead man's life did not rise to the level of a sworn deposition. Chip Roy wants to know who made that call. So do we. So should you. Maybe Karyna Shuliak is completely innocent. Or maybe she was the one person the system chose not to question. Drop your answer below. Innocent or knew everything? But here's the real question. Does it even matter what she knew if no one with power has ever bothered to ask her?